Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod, Hector, and Coach David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
Well, how are you?
I'm doing well. You put out an article today on Truth.com. Everyone should be a subscriber. David Thorpe's 2024-2025 Eastern Conference Battlefront. And in that piece, David talks about everybody else who we didn't mention in his contenders pieces that came out. And the Eastern Conference contenders were the Celtics, Sixers, Knicks, Pacers. So he talks about teams 5 through 11, and not everybody else, because the Pistons, Bulls, Wizards, and Nets don't get talked about
No,
because
I think we did them last week, the bottom rung, whatever we called it. You and I
yeah,
didn't talk about it, but
yeah,
I wrote about
right.
them. Yeah,
They're gonna be also rans because
yeah,
that's just where they are.
they're unlikely to even be playing teams. Yeah,
Yes, yes, but they have interesting players who could be trade targets and whatever that could shift the balance of
but
power
these
for other
teams,
teams.
right? But these teams are middle class teams. That's how we
Mm-hmm,
termed it. That
mm-hmm,
they get a deal or two. I mean, I'm
right.
not. I'm just not smarter than everybody else. Maybe I'm just stupid. I'm not going to put you in a contender if you need to get a piece to be a contender. I'll wait and do
Because
that when you get the piece.
right, we don't know if you're gonna get it or
I mean,
not.
I can make up a lot of things, but here's what we look like now. So
Right.
I think if any of these teams, get a really good player, yeah, things can
One of the
happen.
teams we'll talk about is the Milwaukee Bucks, and I
Yeah,
want to talk about them first because that's the one that I think will get certainly Milwaukee Bucks fans, but so the casual fan being like, wait a minute, they got Giannis and Dame. Shouldn't they be awesome? And sure, in theory they should. But David, I did a quick, obviously read your wonderful piece, but also looked through their roster. Their entire second unit, besides Gary Trent and Bobby Portis, are all on the wrong side of 30 and like 34 and older. That doesn't pretend to be good for because that means if any of your starters get hurt, and by the way, Brook Lopez is 36, going to be 37, you got problems. And I don't know what they can do from a move standpoint to get anybody where they are salary cap wise and all that.
right. The moves they could do would probably be to, in a sense, kind of restart the team, which we don't think they're going to do, because people
Correct.
still think Dame could want to get out. He never wanted to be in Milwaukee, but
Correct.
that's going to make them worse. Yeah, if wave a magic wand and Giannis shoots 35% from three and
Right.
75% from the free throw line, Brook Lopez shoots it great and stays spry, and Dame you know comes back to where he was a couple years ago at
Right.
his age, which is unlikely, and plays great defense. And Doc Rivers suddenly starts playing young guys and is
It's a lot
innovative.
of ifs.
Yeah, I mean, I have them. I don't have them as a tanking team. I have them as a middle
No.
class team. In fact, I think they're the
Yeah.
best middle class team. I recognize what they have. I just think those other teams are better. And really, the only thing people would say is, how do you put the Pacers over them? And my answer is, well, they beat them in the playoffs, albeit the injury.
Mm-hmm.
They beat them 4 or 5,
Yep.
four of the last 5 games in the playoffs, and 4 or 5 in the regular season.
Yep.
And they didn't have Pascal for any of those games in regular season. They did for the playoffs. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I just think Indiana's going to be a better team, and I still think that. Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that. I've watched film on a few teams, including Milwaukee. Stuff that I've seen from some of the stuff they're doing in the summertime. Yeah, they're gonna be good. Yeah, but
Yeah.
just not as good as other teams.
And they're so reliant, David, on Dame, who you mentioned, 34, Middleton 33. I might have them
Coming
switched
off
around. Either way,
coming off 2 surgeries, Middleton.
correct. Which look, but I want to be fair. Middleton had a great productive year
Yep,
last year, but just in limited minutes because he was hurt.
and he was
What
good
are
in the
the
playoffs.
chances?
And he was.
Right.
I love him. No, I'm a fan of
Mm-hmm.
all of those guys. The evidence is what the evidence is.
Right.
To ignore the evidence would be I'm acting on faith. That's not how I approach things anyway.
Shouldn't be how you approach basketball. That's for sure.
I mean, unless you can be a fan all you want. I'm a
Right.
fan of them as players, but if I have to put on analyst hat, I have real question marks. Pat Connaughton was not good last year.
No.
DeLon Wright didn't do as well as I thought he would do. I think in Miami last year,
Mm-hmm.
he's an important backup. They're young guys. Their best young guy is a two-way player. There's no guarantee
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Rollins will even play for the varsity very much. I
Right.
don't think Marjan Beauchamp looked. I thought he looked awful in the summer. It's one of the guys I saw on film, obviously in person in Vegas. I don't see where it's coming from. Yeah,
Yeah.
if I was a bigger believer in Doc,
Yeah.
I might change my tune, but I'm not.
Right. The odds are Doc is not going to play any of the young guys like Rollins or Beauchamp or anybody and give him a
Probably not.
chance. So
Or
is that
or remember they drafted a kid, I think the youngest kid in the draft.
yes,
He's
yes.
very talented, but I don't think he's going to help them win games this year.
No, no. But that would be the area, right? Where you'd say, okay, one of these 3, 4 young guys will give them enough playing time, enough oxygen that maybe come April, they can prove to be valuable pieces. But again, that goes against what Doc normally does, right? A coach like him wants guys that we trust, which is why Pat Bev is there, which is why these old vets are there. All well and good. But the chances of those guys getting hurt, highly likely, right? Because the older you are, injury prone, all that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm not a believer in Milwaukee in terms of them doing anything in the postseason, barring, as we talked about, something happening that we can't foresee right now.
Right. I would say most of my middle class teams, Milwaukee being one of them, are good enough to win a round. If because they're good enough where if the other team doesn't really play great for whatever reason, injuries, whatever, Milwaukee can be good enough to beat them. But to continue to go, I think it's a stretch too far.
Yeah, to win 4 rounds as currently constructed, we don't see it. A team we both like, the Cavaliers, and I love how you title this in the piece. All eyes on Evan Mobley. It's really all boils down to that, right? Because if he makes the leap we think he can make, I mean, that's such a huge piece for them because they already have Donovan Mitchell, an All-NBA player. Jarrett Allen, you mentioned Okoro, who you like a lot, who shot well from 3 last year. We know can guard. And if Darius Garland can, do we think it was a situation that him and Donovan were having issues? What do we think the reason was that he wasn't clicking last year?
The reporting that I was able to grab hold of did not suggest it was Donovan Mitchell at all. It was a little bit the coach. They all kind of stopped believing in JB, Darius included, and then reasons unknown, but not personal with Donovan. But for Darius, he was bad. I mean, he was a top 10% of the league player for a couple years in a row.
Yeah,
awesome. Anything close to return to that, with the other guys they have, I think they can be really good. They can easily win a round, if not 2 rounds. They won one last year.
For sure. Well, 2 years ago, we liked them a lot.
Yeah.
We were like, this team can be really good. Yeah. Donovan's, we know, is a proven playoff guy. We like what they have there. Yeah, I would love to see Garland get back to close to that all-star level because that backcourt, nightmare to guard with those 2 guys.
Yeah,
and with Mobley now.
You know, they have a new coach who I thought did a good job in Brooklyn.
But like doing Brooklyn.
You know, it's hard to suggest that they're going to be better than those other teams. Although I do think they could be better than Indiana. Don't get me wrong. I do think I think Milwaukee's less likely to do that. If Mobley makes the jump, and I wrote this, I think. I know I wrote it. I don't know if it made the final edition. I didn't see the final edition today, but you know, Mobley's a late blooming big dude. So it does mean he'll make the jump in year 4. It could be year 5, year 6. I mean, we've seen it so many different times at different places. But if he makes the Scotty Barnes jump, now you got 2 All NBA level players with him and Donovan, with a legit 5, a legit 1, and 2 legit 3s. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah, cooking with grease. The Heat we talked about. To me, we mentioned Bam shooting 3s and the Heat in general shooting 3s, which I agree with you 100%. To me, I think this is all about Jimmy Butler in so many ways. Is he going to lead the charge? And I don't want to say care about the regular season because it's not like he doesn't care, but are they going to sort of change their care more and, make a full effort to be like, all right, I'm playing 65 games, whatever the number is, and, we're going to go hard and try to do it? Or is it, I'm just going to maintain and get to the play-in, and then when we get there, we'll see what happens?
I mean, yeah, I went into it thinking Jimmy's going to be great. I don't know how many games he'll play. He's going to be great. They need Jovic to really step up, continue to step up. Hero needs to do much better defensively and then play well offensively. Duncan Robinson, I thought, made some movement last year towards the light as a 29-year-old. More of a playmaker with the ball when you ran him off the 3. Bam shooting 3s, I think, super important. Jaime Jaquez in year 2. What is he going to be? I think Thomas Bryant probably beats out Kevin Love at the 5. I think they shoot more 3s this year. I think they play faster this year. Their offense was so bad. Their pace was so bad last year. They've got to win with smoke and mirrors, but the Heat have done that before. They just need to have that urgency to do it with good coaching, good strategy, good execution, and everyone kind of rowing on the same time frame and all of that. But Bam's got an upside still. If he starts making threes, he can play off the dribble. So you've got to
Yeah.
come out more on him, and I think that opens their offense up a lot more too.
I think the Heat were 29th in pace last
I
year,
thought they
if
were
I'm not
30th.
mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay. Either
One or
way,
the other,
second to
yeah.
last or last.
Slow. They were slow.
Not good.
No. Well,
right?
not for them. I think they need to find ways to generate offense, so playing faster would help. Shooting more
Right.
threes will open things up too. They've done it before.
And we're not saying they got to be the Pacers and play blur ball.
They shouldn't
but
be
you got to
the
be
Pacers.
better than 30th,
Yeah.
right? Like
I
15th maybe. Can you get up to that level?
Yeah, I mean, I feel differently if you had James Harden running the show. Remember, some of these teams
Right.
were super slow, but they don't have James Harden.
Right.
Yeah, in fact,
Right.
they have Terry Rozier, who I love as an offensive talent, but he
Great
didn't
shot
do much
maker.
last year in Miami. He was injured some. He's a big question mark for them. They need him, and I don't even know what backup I would trust. They've got a few options, but I'm not sure. Terry's going to have a really good year for them.
We loved Orlando last year. You're high on Jamal Mosley, as am I. In your article,
Yeah.
you said he's right next to Mark Dignaul as the best young coach in the
love him.
league, which is very high praise. I think they're going to be an excellent defense again this year. There's no reason to say why they shouldn't. If you were talking to Jamal Mosley, how would you help him figure out what the hell should we do on offense?
I don't know if it's strategy as much as youth. Wagner shot 3 poorly. Paolo takes a lot of tough shots and doesn't make many. He's got to focus better. That's going to come as the game slows down. I was talking to a young player the other day, younger than Paolo, and he was telling me how all these things I've been trying to get him to see, and in year one, he just couldn't really see it. He said, Coach, I'm starting to see it now. Nothing's happening for me yet, but I'm starting to see what you're saying happening in real time. That's progress. Well, Paolo's got 2 years of that now. So he's got to finish shots better. Someone's got to make easy plays for other guys. Suggs is a one, isn't really great at that, but he shot great from 3 last year. He's a great defender. He brings a ton of energy and kind of charisma to the team, identity. Transition because of their defense, really racing. If those guys can just individually play better when they're open, it's going to help their offense, even if they just keep the same system in place. Jonathan Isaac is an important thing to watch because he really started coming on last year, and he's the best defensive player in the world, in my opinion. So, but he's good at the rim and all of that too. Yeah, there's reason for optimism, as everyone has been talking about if you listen to national pods.
One of my favorite things is when you talk about players and their development and, when they start to see things. So can you a little bit talk about how the game starts to slow down for a player and when they start to see it start, not perfect yet, but it's starting to slow down?
I'll give you this exact example. So there's a player I help who's a big athletic wing, young. And one thing I like to do for those guys is teach them how to use their body to score in the paint against mismatches. And that doesn't mean just pack them down, bully. Like the whole team knows it's coming on defense. No, I mean time up your slice-ins, your seals, your duck-ins right in front of the rim. Time that up, put them on your back and call for the ball. And you have to, when I say time it up, the timing up requires 2 things. You have to do it in relation to where your defender is, but coordinated with that is where the ball is. Because if I try to duck in front of the rim against my guard, and I'm a big 6'7" to 6'10" guy, but the ball's at half court, well, he's not going to throw me the ball.
Right.
I have to time it up with where the ball is and who's got the ball. And is he looking at me? Because that's one of the things these guys will do is when they finally start sealing well, then they start realizing, oh, the ball's over there. And then they start realizing, and he's not even looking at me. So it's all got to be coordinated. So this player said, I've sent him a lot of tape over this last year. We did it all last season. And he said, they're not throwing it to me. But in 5-on-5, I know I'm timing it up. I'm finally, before it happens, I see where the ball's going. I see where my defender is. I'm ducking in or sealing right at the right time. And I'm, these players do. If you listen to the game, you'll hear these kind of things. I did it too. Woo! That kind of thing to be open. And the player, they just don't care about him because he's just a young player. They're doing their own thing. But I told him, okay, the next step is you got to hang out with those dudes. Buy him a pizza, hang out with them, get lunch, literally, and just like, hey, when I know because of a cross match and transition or a switch, I'm going to look for those opportunities, give a peek down to me. Like, different if you're the alpha player. They better look for you. Well,
Yeah,
they're gonna have to go
correct.
talk to the head coach sitting on the bench, right? Typically, anyway. But yeah. So that and you could hear. I was telling this to my wife actually. I could hear him grinning when he was telling me this. He's a very sweet kid. I could hear him smiling, like I see it. Like I finally see it. It's one thing if I show him, he'll see it, but he's not seeing
Right.
it in real time. And so
Right.
now we started seeing it in real time. So yeah, that's a big, big step for them when they start doing that.
It's reps, right? The only way you start seeing is you need to get reps to do it, right? You ain't
Rep,
going to see it from the bench.
reps and study. So that's my job, and I'm sure his team has done that. Well, I'm not even so sure
Mhm.
because they're not worried about him. He's not a star.
Right.
My job is to constantly show these guys this what it looks like, what it looks like, what it looks like, what it looks like. I remember reading Jay-Z's book. This was a while,
Mm.
whenever it came out, and I've listened to him over the years. The trial and error. I couldn't write a single. I've never written a song in my life, and I'm sure I'd be terrible at it. But I've written lots of things, as sure people know. But the rhyming book that he has, and
Mm.
you got to just work it and work it and work it. I promise you, the Jay-Z songwriter now, if he's even doing it
Right.
anymore, because he's
Right.
still.
Way better than first song.
I mean, I can't even imagine the difference.
Right.
I can't imagine the difference because of things like this. These
Mhm.
players who don't see a thing, and remember, seeing it is just one thing. You still got to get your body to do it. So I was watching a summer tape of one of my players who's a guard, and he has really gotten good at the go left off the screen and then high hook pass to the opposite corner with your weak hand.
Mm.
Well, he even if he could see it 2 years ago, which he couldn't make the left hand pass, and he did it. I'm like, beautiful. The next time he threw a really high pass turnover, so it's not there yet. So you
Right.
got to get the skill conjoined to the recognition, and that takes time also. But it begins with study, focus, and then you got to play it out and keep doing it. And when you start doing it, you get reference points. Oh man, I came too early here. By the time my guy saw me, I was defended again. I got to time that up better. You kind of tweak that stuff up. Yeah. When you watch an expert at these kinds of things, playing off the ball especially,
Mhm.
it's brilliant. The millisecond they're supposed to
Yeah.
duck in, they do it every fucking time. And then they just have to hope a teammate sees it because they know they're where it's supposed to be.
It's the joys of this game when you watch it. So it makes me think about that, David. So you're talking about players who are, young, not the stars, who are learning as they grow.
Yeah.
How amazing is it when you see the preternatural players like LeBron and Luca, who seemingly knew how to do that shit coming out of the womb, like
Yeah.
crazy, right? Like, how do you know how to do this at 16? Like, unreal.
So there's a really good example of this, actually. I was able to watch a kid. So I can say this now because it's on social media. I went to the 5-on-5 workouts at a gym in Orlando. Siakam has his own gym, and I was able to go watch these practices with all the Pacers. Tyrese isn't playing. Jarrett Walker wasn't playing. Everyone else played. Everyone. And they did it a couple weeks ago with all young guys, and I was
Mm.
invited to go. And they have this kid. I forget his name, first name, but his last name is Furphy. Early second round pick out of Kansas, I think from Australia, I think. And apparently was considered to be a lottery pick. And listening to people like Kevin Pelton and others ranked super high on their metrics. But I could see firsthand why he dropped.
Mhm.
There's no muscle definition. He can't really shoot yet. 6'8" wing. And I don't know that he's good at anything. He does not look good in individual workouts. And so I actually went to a Pacers coach that I'd not met before. We have mutual friends. And I said, what's going on here? Like, why is everyone so high on this kid? I thought I knew because when you do well in the metrics, it tells you
Mhm.
something,
Yep.
especially when you look bad individually. And he said, oh, he's a 5-on-5 guy.
Mm.
And so I didn't notice it on Monday. I really wasn't paying much attention to him, but that's knowing how to play. So Jalen Green will be the opposite of that. Put Jalen Green at 1-on-0, 2-on-0, 1-on-1,
Right.
2-on-2. Woo!
Crushing.
Oh my God, right. 5-on-5, it's a work in
Right.
progress. And so even
Yeah.
last year with Jalen Green, he finally was coming out of it. If you look at his EPM chart, you
Mhm.
see a nice ascension as the season's coming and then you drop the final like
Mhm.
3 weeks, 2 weeks. So who knows why. But I do think Jalen Green, like he'd be one of my guys that I think's an MIP candidate this year if we were looking at that, because I just have a sense that he's starting to figure out the 5-on-5 aspect of this game. And so some guys just like Furphy just have a natural feel for it. And maybe they've been coached well also, don't get me wrong. And now they have to work on their muscle. And for him, say it's his strength, his athleticism, his conditioning, his skills, handle, shoot, all of that, but he figures it out. My favorite thing to talk about, and I might write about this, I just came up with the term sticky brain. I am sure I'm not the first person to think that. But one thing I've noticed with, I've such this cross section of clients, the young guys just don't learn fast compared to the veterans. The veterans you just got to whisper, boom. They figure it out right away. And if I am able to see them in person, I can say, like I'm at a workout, I'll say, hey, try this. Immediately, they can do it. Their brain is just so damn sticky. As we have, we're all much older than these players. And I can listen to a podcast, which I do every day, all day, when I'm walking and stuff. And Zach Lowe can say something, or someone's interviewing with Nate Duncan or whatever, and they'll say something smart right away. It makes sense to me. I immediately will get my phone. I'll text this player. I'll voice message a lot when I'm walking because my brain sticks to that kind of stuff right away. 10 years ago, it would have just been an interesting thing. I never would have thought about it. That's part of wisdom of age and experience. With these players, LeBron is unfair because he was always the most athletic and always super fast processor guy. And now he's got all these years. It'd be like Tom Brady, who has still that kind of athleticism. It's not fair.
Yeah.
They have everything. Everything. If you beat them, which you can do, they're learning from that too right away. It's like they are, in a sense, AI. They're still learning all the time. That is a fearsome quality to have. And which is why when you think of someone like Steph and KD, the stuff these guys have done, LeBron, it's another level. It's another it's a level beyond what we think of because they're still getting reference points and learning all the time.
I love that, the sticky brain. That makes me think of Luka, of course.
Yeah.
Obviously makes you think of Jokic, like,
For sure.
Because again, he probably, to your point, the 5-on-5 was always there. But as you said, so lose some weight and whatever, you're going to be best player in the world. Sure enough, it happened.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
The Luka call is a good call because when you watch him play as a teenager, he wasn't the man. He actually became the man and might have still been a 19-year-old at that point. But he wasn't initially, but he's playing with men. And so they're playing tactically over there. It's not like pickup. There's no tactical in pickup. There is in EuroLeague. And so, so again, I say Tom Brady only because Brady had the arm and that was about it, but he had the brain. And I think, and it just played so long and saw everything possible. I mean, what is guys like I would love to see, I wish Shub could do this. Maybe someone can get Luka and James Harden in the same room.
Oh, and
let them just cut film and talk.
Oh, man.
What they've seen, and they would be, I guarantee you, LeBron also would be great. KD, Steph, get them in a room, and they would say, oh, I remember Phoenix did this. And someone say, well, then the Wizards tried it this way. They can remember the twists and turns and changes and adjustments and how they countered it. Oh, this really hurt me. But the next time we played them, I did this. Like, that's just all counter move kind of stuff these guys can do. And they remember all of it, just like a golfer remembers what he did. If you ask Tiger Woods, 11th hole Masters, day one, year 2, year 3, what did you use?
He'll know exactly.
He'll know exactly what club he used and where the ball was.
He'll know what the wind direction was. When was
all those
crazy,
guys.
These people.
All those guys are because they have sticky brains. So all that stuff's factored in at a higher level than the rest of us, kind of process in most of our lives.
This is the part about elite athletes that I love the most. Is this stuff right here. Like it's just incredible how they're able to use their brains to do these things. I'm constantly amazed at what they're able to do. It's fun stuff when you really slow down and watch a game. And it's, something you mentioned too, David. It's the half the pause, right? The half a heartbeat, right? Yeah. They're able to hold the ball just for, and it's right, just so they can manipulate. I knew you were going to go left or whatever the defender's going to do. Perfect. Here we go. Zip the pass the opposite way, whatever it is. It's just incredible.
So sometimes, have I talked to you about baiting the hook? I don't think I've talked to you about this. No. So I wish Travis was on the call here. What was the great Greg Maddux, right? Braves pitcher.
Yep.
Didn't really have amazing stuff.
I mean, it didn't have power, but had excellent control and movement.
Well, but what we've now learned, because he's been opening up, is he also had the brain. So he gave this amazing talk. I've said it to all my players, of which the young guys won't really understand it. I got to keep sending it to them. he it's unbelievable, Jarod. He would talk about how it was one particular. I thought I'd mentioned this to you before. One particular batter he was facing near the end of the regular season, and they had a commanding lead, and Greg was still in the game, and he told his catcher, "I'm going to throw this pitch," and the catcher was upset, like that was the one pitch you're not supposed to throw, and he fucking yanked it out of the park. And afterwards, the catcher's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, that's the one pitch we were told not to throw. I think it was inside, whatever. And Greg's like, "I know, but they're really good. We're really good. I'm going to see them in the playoffs, and he's going to be looking for that pitch when it matters most." And so, sure enough, he's, according to the catcher, he struck him out on 3 pitches in the playoffs late in the game, all kind of showing. And then they baited it.
And yep.
Yeah. So that's exactly what these top guys do. To your point, is the pause for them sometimes is, I'm giving you the bait here. I'm showing this. As I tell my players, we work on what I call quick release jumpers or quick release floaters. The Brunson's got a great quick release floater. The first quick release jumper I ever worshipped was Bernard King's.
Very quick.
80s, just when he wanted it. So when you do that, you've now baited the hook for the fake because they're so on edge to contest or even jump for your quick shot. Well, now you can fake. Okay. So we have to bait that. But that's one way these guys do it. What I'm always most impressed with is we all grow up being told, don't jump and pass. And I understand it because you're committed. But the game sometimes requires, whether it's you jump to save a loose ball when you're in the air. So, or they have to, so they jump to save it or jump to get a bad pass, whatever. And 99.9% of the basketball playing high school, college players will immediately pass it and often turn the ball over because they're trying to make a play out of nothing. The NBA players just wait. Just that extra beat. They let the defensive guy commit and then throw it opposite him. It's this that the game just slows down.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that world is like. Although when I played, I was a pretty good player. Like I could see things. I could get a rebound. I remember very vividly a rebound, an outlet pass early, and my brain would take a quick picture. We had to develop our peripheral vision when I was growing up at the high school I was at, where you did all sorts of drills. And I was tested once. I can really see pretty wide on both sides. So I could just quickly do just a quick little turn left and right and go. And I could also calculate not just the horizontal, but the vertical. So I could make a play. And I knew if I could occupy my defender's eyes as I kind of got to the second box, I could flip it over my shoulder. I knew my guy was coming. I also knew that he knew I like to throw that pass. I wasn't as good left as right. So I would just come here, occupy, boom, and he'd be right there. And people say, "Oh, amazing." Not so amazing. I saw him coming right away. Now, if I had played every day, all day like these guys for a decade plus, I'd have been way, way better. I also didn't have the work ethic I needed to really work. I didn't love it like that. These guys do. And I don't know if I told you this about Chris Paul on this subject. I was talking to a player this summer. I had lunch with this player in Vegas, an NBA player who knows Chris Paul well. And we were talking about how many games I watched during the night. He's like, "Man, you remind me of Chris Paul." I said, "How's that?" He's like, "CP." He said, "All he does is watch tape." And he said, like, literally, coach, it'd be 2:30 in the afternoon, and he's watching games all the time. And so I ran to someone else this summer. I don't remember who it was, who knows CP. And without me saying a word, he was like, "Man, you remind me of CP." I'm like, "Geez, I guess he watched a lot of basketball." No surprise.
I mean, he's not the point guard for no reason, David, right? Like, I mean, particularly when you're his size, to dominate the NBA and be one of the all-time winningest players at that size.
And not a jumper. I mean, it wasn't like he was Westbrook or Derrick Rose.
Correct. Yeah. He ain't like an elite athlete. Like, well, you got to fucking know the game, right? Like, and see stuff.
Have you ever seen the movie The Flash? The Lace movie. Okay, I only saw a few minutes of it. But there's a scene in The Flash where he's so fast, he can actually stop and eat some food and whatever, because it really what's happening is everything's just super slow around him. Right. That's really what it's like, is we are amazed. Yeah. They're not so amazed.
Right.
It's just living life for them. They're listening to a podcast at 3 times the speed, and it sounds normal to them.
Right. It's it really, when you boil all this stuff down, right? If you were to take, measures of the heart rates of these guys during these moments, right? The best players, I bet their heart rates are more often than not on an even keel basis, right? So they're able to focus, versus to your point about the young college guy or high school player who makes the mistake, the heart rate's on like 210, right? Because they're freaking out about everything that happens. In soccer, a sport I watch a lot too, it's a similar thing, right? They call it the pausa, right? Where you get the ball, and instead of when someone's pressing you, because you're so worried, you immediately flick it because you're so worried about turning it over, well, you're going to turn it over now. Instead of just holding it for a sec, let them commit to the direction they're
Yeah.
going. Now, boom, turn the other way, right? Like, but it's hard because you're nervous, right? If you don't have the requisite like practice, it makes you fearful.
Well, and those are reps too. So we call them swings. Uh, uh, my son was really gifted at the quick swing, which means there wasn't anyone potentially going to steal the swing. So catch and go. But then he got good as he got older at what you just said. If you just swing it right away and someone's there, they might jump the route. So you hold it for just a moment and kind of eye the rim, and that freezes that defender thinking, oh man, he may not swing, and then you swing it.
Correct.
And it's easy to do when you practice it, but it has to be practiced. Yeah.
Yes. It's just incredible stuff. I love when we talk stuff like this. All right, folks, we'll be back after a brief commercial break. All right, David. A former player, Spencer Hawes, was on a podcast recently talking about his playing career, things of that nature. And he said something to the effect of playing 82 games a season was sort of like a badge of honor for him. And we often hear players talk about stuff like that, especially older players, even older than Spencer Hawes, like players from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Like, well, in our day, there was no load management. We played, and it's like, well,
and
it used to be a good idea to drive without a seatbelt. Like, we know that's not a great idea anymore, right? Things change over time. But but that type of rhetoric, though, David, I always find dangerous because it feeds into how a lot of fans feel about, players. And they're like, we know it. These guys are just lazy and they're making all this money. And it's not about laziness. It's about literally like what's good for their bodies and good for the overall sport.
Yeah. Way back, I don't know how long ago, but many years ago, I remember Henry saying that our athletes are just not performing at the level of athleticism that they are in November, later in the season. And that we'd have more exciting games and more superstars would be playing if we just did a better job with our schedule. And so I always think of that's the prism I look at everything through, is what can we deliver in April? What are we delivering in April? In fact, I've been talking to some of the players I help that are on teams that think they can win a championship. And I've given that exact speech of, I've got to help you be delivered to April feeling great. I had a couple players after the playoffs this year tell me they feel like it's the preseason. Now, I have nothing to do with that. They have their own physios and everything, but that's the goal, is to feel that good. And what Spencer's describing is just the antithesis of that, is you're just not going to be at your best. It's not good for our business. Imagine going to a wrestling match back when people watch. I've been with people still watch professional wrestling, I think. I heard Tyrese was in one recently.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
that's what I heard. Yeah. The Pacers were in Orlando. I'm sure they all got together to watch. Where was that at? I think it was pre-recorded.
Don't know where it was at.
I think they saw it on TV. I don't know that for sure, but I think that. Imagine going and all you saw were the backups. If they played 4 games a week, that's all you would see, right? So we're trying to deliver, that mentality is, you're not a better man, stronger man, tougher man by playing every game. You might be selfish.
Actually dumb,
right? Yeah. It's not good for you unless you're trying to lose games. If you want to argue you're trying to lose games, that's fine. Knock yourself out. Go run a marathon first. How about that? Why don't you play pickup all day? We don't do that. Why don't you practice super hard? We don't do that. Well, there's a reason for all of it. That's why we don't want you to play every game, all 82 games, at 34 minutes a game, whatever. It's one thing if you're playing 15, 20 minutes a game. It's much easier.
We've talked about this before. The schedules in all sports are just becoming to a point where it's out of control. I mentioned soccer before the break. In world football, this is happening. Every year, FIFA and UEFA, right? UEFA, which manages European clubs, and FIFA, which manages international football, they keep adding these competitions. We're at a state right now where every 4 years, players are going to have 1 year where they get the summer off. 1 year, which is insane because you've got the Euro competition every 2 years, World Cup every 4, and now the FIFA Club World Cup on top of that. And for those players who play on our side of the hemisphere, they have Copa America every 2 years, right? It's insane. It's just nonsense. You cannot play these sports 12 months a year. And the reason why it's 12 for these guys is because not just their club, it's club and their country responsibilities. That's where UEFA comes in, where FIFA comes in, excuse me, with the extra tournaments. We watch sports because we want to see the best players at their best doing amazing things. And we are increasingly moving down a hole where we're not getting that. Yeah, we're getting more games, which gives people more money, but we're not seeing the best competition play. And it's unfortunate.
Well, then just factor in, we've talked about this many times before, but it bears repeating. The starting at the age of 8, 9, 10, they're playing, 50 basketball tournaments or 20 basketball tournaments in a year where you're playing 5 to 7 games in a weekend. It's brutal. They're taking a beating because refs don't call anything because the same refs work all the games. They want to get games over with. It's a bloodbath. It's really ugly. And it also toughens the guys up. I never really complained about it from my son and his friends and teammates, but it wasn't good. And but we had the sense of not playing our guys every weekend, and we played 10, 11, 12 guys every single game, pretty much every game. That's not what happens in a lot of places. No. And we also had good practices that sometimes focus just on skill work and not playing. In most of these AAU cases, they're just playing pickup those times too. Now, they're not going full speed. They think they are, but they're not. But still, it adds a toll. So our guys are showing up to college pretty beaten up, and it doesn't get any better when you're in the NBA. This is, at some point, I'd like to see some kind of basketball entity dictate better, but it's not easy to do that. I thought about trying to get involved something like that. I just don't have the time for it. I want to focus on what I'm doing, but
and it's really hard, right? Because David, whatever entity gets in the way of this for basketball or soccer, you are going up against the capitalism and the money, and we generally know how those fights go.
And that necessarily means the shoe companies, because they want you to wear your shoes out. Yeah, if they would say just do it 3 times a week instead of 7 times a week, it would be way better for the sport, bad for their business. They're not going to do that.
Correct. Yeah. Here we are. Something in the world of politics happened in the NBA. The Miami Heat put out a statement that warmed your heart a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how many. I think it was in there how many Haitians they have living in Miami.
Yeah, it's a very big Haitian community in South Florida.
Yeah, because of what's happened in Ohio and everything. And I love seeing a team saying, you know what, we may lose fans over this. Maybe they won't. I have no idea. But I don't know that they feel like they definitely will. And they still posted a support of the Haitian community. I'm waiting for a lot more of that. As a Jewish person, when I see these kinds of things, even if they were illegal immigrants, I would be very against this kind of rhetoric. But they aren't even illegal.
Right.
Really doing great things for a community. Nothing's perfect anywhere. It's a complex world we live in. I've heard legitimate instances of concern when if young men are coming over trying to buy a house. They all have gainful jobs, by the way. Good jobs. Educated people, good jobs. They can afford to pay for a house with 3 incomes, all as single men, than a dual income household, mother, father, or just a couple. That's a legitimate concern that some of the better houses are being bought up by non-family owned people. I think there's ways around that. That isn't alarming. It's something government's got to deal with. This is the complex world we live in. But the way it's been treated by one of the people running for president, mind you, is beyond staggering and beyond disgusting. And I actually caught a really great documentary. Wasn't even a documentary. It was a movie that was like a documentary about Albert Einstein and the bomb. It's called Einstein and the Bomb, maybe on Netflix. I watched it on a recent plane trip I had. And it was super clever, Jarod. They took every word Einstein uttered in the movie was the word he really said in real life or wrote. So there was no artistic license for that. And they had an actor playing Einstein, but anytime they showed reels, it was the real video. You knew it wasn't the same person. It was really Einstein. And they talk about, he basically was kicked out of Germany penniless. Everything. Long before the World War II. This is what they started doing. Well, it didn't begin with destroy all their stores, take all their money, and take all their art and their property. It started with just the rhetoric of the day. It's their fault all this is happening. So here we are. So at least one team, in a red state, by the way, state sadly is red, said enough.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more.
Well, as you always say, David, right? It's not hard to be decent, right? It requires nothing for you to be decent, and that's what the Heat
Which
did
is
there,
all the
right?
Heat did there. Yep, they just show some decency.
Just be decent.
Yeah, I hope the Haitians community, the Haitian community, packs the gym. The way you may have you heard this in Springfield? A lot of the white residents who are also alarmed at what's happened are packing the Haitian restaurants.
Yeah, saw that. Yep.
There is some goodness in this world. I like those people. The good
It
people I
is
like
nice.
a lot.
It is nice when we get to see it because, let's be honest, we don't see it very often.
Not
so
nearly enough.
it is nice when we get to see it. Last bit of news here. Adrian Wojnarowski has retired from ESPN. He will become the general manager at St. Bonaventure University's basketball team. It's where his alma mater, where he went to school. Look, we if you listen to this podcast, we've talked about Woj before. I don't want to get into a long thing. Bottom line is, I know for NBA fans and especially on social media, Woj is a cult hero and like a figure because he breaks trades and transactions and everybody gets all excited with Woj bombs and it's so cool. We've talked about it before. It's like he's not news breaking anything. Like it's
just a mouthpiece.
Right. It's not dogged reporting. It's not like he's, on the hunt, and it's just people within the organizations who feed him the information for their own purposes, right? And granted, he's used it to build his own empire and make riches, and fine. That's how the system works. It is what it is. Bottom line is, it's not like we've lost like the great NBA investigative reporter of our. That's not it, right?
No.
It's just the new. Guess what? We'll still get it. Shams is still here, so we'll get the news from Shams, right? It's the same thing.
Or teams. I've always said the same thing. The way teams treated Woj, they could just do it themselves. They just chose not to because they want to make a friend with ESPN,
right?
And not get criticized necessarily. He was certainly never going to be critical of anybody. As someone who reads All the President's Men every single year, I've for at least 20 straight years now. I've read that book as a reminder of what real journalism is. I just pretend to do it. You guys are the real journalists. I'm not. I'm just a basketball guy that you guys have on. But I admire it. My mom was a journalist for many years in Miami. That's real journalism because your work, no one's trying to give you anything and you're working to advance a story that was the truth.
Exactly.
Teams are just, they know the deal's done. And I've been involved in this many times and had the agents.
Before you continue, David, I want to say, I can't say specifics, but can I tell you guys that countless times, David will tell us in our chat or whatever, such and such deals already is done. And this is the deal, blah, blah. And then hours later or even days later, a Woj or Shams bomb. But David's just not, it's because it's not whatever. Like it's nothing.
It doesn't do me any good to break the news at all. And yeah, that's exactly it is. They know it's happening and they decide to release it to whomever. I've been in the conversations to release it to the local beat reporter, which used to happen far more frequently. Social media has changed that a lot. So now it tends to be the big guys. And then it's a debate of which national reporter gets it. Is it Woj? If it's a draft thing, to give it to John Gavoni. Like these are the discussions that are had all the time. But it's not like journalists are a big part of how we help solve problems in America. Because most people want to conceal that which would embarrass them or that is potentially really scary. And so the media is a big part of that check on power. Well, none of that's happening with the NBA. If the NBA is doing some things wrong, those mouthpieces won't be breaking anything.
Correct.
It'll be someone else willing to do the dirty work and like Henry Abbott, by the way, who's willing to call the truth, whether it's going to help his career or not. That we need those kinds of guys. So nothing has changed. The statements will come from somebody else, but it's coming from the NBA, period. And if I was a college basketball fan, I'm not sure how I would take this because I don't know where his expertise. I know reporters think they're experts. I listen to them all the time and I call them friends. I like them. But when I hear them talking about what this team needs, if they're just looking at the statistics, fine, anyone can do that. But they're not really basketball people, just like I'm not really a writer. I write, doesn't mean I really understand writing the way Travis and Henry do. I acknowledge that. That's fine with me. Can't be good at everything. I'm lucky. I'm just trying to be good at one thing. And so college basketball, he's going to be a GM. I deal with these GMs all the time. I'm not sure I'd be betting money on St. Bonaventure anytime soon. Bringing a reporter in. We've tried that before as an executive. His name was David Kahn.
Yeah, well, so, we all know how that worked out.
He's a connected dude, and I won't ever think about them again, good or bad. I won't be involved in it. I just know the NBA isn't affected one bit because the same way they got Adrian the information, they'll just text it to someone else and he'll tweet it out. Simple as that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week. Take care.